Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and today on the podcast, we're talking about people who call their bosses cheap, or as we say here in Australia, a tight ass. Before we get into that, I just want to thank our presenting sponsor, the Coffee Small Business Mastermind Group by Mapper Forward. If you're interested in getting together with a group of people online and discussing business, small business, particularly in the coffee industry, and what are the challenges you're experiencing, as well as some solutions, head to mapperforward.org/group coaching and hit the link to register today. Now, if you have a boss that you think is cheap, I want to have a little chat about why perhaps you may be looking at things the wrong way. Now, that's not to say that there aren't bosses out there that may be cheap, but I want to invite you to look at things a different way. To preface the idea of cheap, we need to understand what it is to have a business in the coffee industry. So having a small business in the coffee industry, people will lead you to believe that there are millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of profit, and that if your boss is driving around in a Porsche or a Tesla, that clearly they're making a ton of money, and that because you see millions of dollars coming through the cash register or the POS, depending on what age group you are, you'll call it something different. But depending on what kind of money you see coming into the business, you may base that as you may decide or assume that your boss is making a ton of money. Now, if you fall into that category, let me help manage your expectations around that. If the business is being run well, based on some numbers that we have hashed out many times on this podcast, a cafe or a coffee shop can look forward to a whopping 3% net profit, 6% if they're doing extraordinarily well. Those are the numbers that they can be looking at earning, which if you don't have any context as to whether that's doing well or not, those are very razor thin margins. They need one thing to go wrong, either the toilet breaks down or they have something happen that shuts them down for a couple of days, and you can start to see those margins being eaten into very, very quickly. That's if they are experiencing any margins. And so I say this to then lead on to those of us who talk about a boss who's really cheap. Because if you are looking at your boss and saying they won't spend money on extra fancy gadgets and equipment and tools, they won't buy the expensive milk that customers really like, they charge extra for silly things like, alternative milks or little sachets of different kinds of sauces or whatever it is. All of these things add up in a way that you may not see in a profit and loss statement, because if your boss is not giving you transparency into their profit and loss statement, maybe they don't know how to read a profit and loss statement, which is not unusual in our industry, or maybe it's that they don't know how to explain it to you, or that they're not unsure if you'd be interested in it. But having an insight into your employers, the way that they cost things out, the way that they run the business financially, if that's something that you're interested in learning about, I would encourage you to say to them, hey, listen, I think that I could be a better employee if I understood the way that we cost product out and exactly what it costs for us to sell, insert whatever beverage you want here, or insert whatever product. Now, giving you an insight into understanding how that business runs. And if you're an employer listening to this, giving your employees insight into how all of this stuff runs will help you better bridge the gap between, I don't have enough money to pay for all this extra stuff that my staff want, but I would really want to give it to them, And the other side of the bridge, which is my boss is cheap. It's not that your boss is cheap. It may not be that your boss is cheap. It's just that they have bills that they have to prioritize over the really fun stuff, like wanting to take the team out for a team building exercise, or not being able, only giving you certain things that you can order off the menu for your break meal. It's all about managing costs. So when you say, my boss is cheap, make sure that you're qualifying what you mean by that. And make sure it's not that that when you say they're being cheap, it's not that they're actually being, I want to use a bunch of different words here, but let's go with they're being aware and they're running their business well, so that the extra stuff, that the extra cash flow that they have, it needs to go to making sure that your wages are paid every month, rather than making sure that you are going to go on a team building exercise or something along that vein, the fun stuff that they all want to do, buy extra expensive coffee that they don't know if they're going to sell, all of these things. Whenever you hear you say, my boss is cheap, whenever you hear yourself say, my boss is cheap, make sure that you're able to ask yourself the question first, why is my boss cheap? Is it because he's running the business responsibly, or she's running the business, or they're running the business responsibly? Or is it that she's actually being really responsible? So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments below, or you can email us at support@mapperforward.org, and we're happy to help with your questions. While you're here, don't forget to subscribe, whether you're watching or whether you're listening to this podcast. Thanks, friends. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day.